did the Hindus never eat beef? To the question whether the Hindus ever ate beef, every touchable Hindu, whether he is a Brahmin or a non-Brahmin, will say no, never. In a certain sense he is right. From times, no Hindu has eaten beef. If this is all that the touchable Hindu wants to convey by his answer, there need be no quarrel over it. But when the learned Brahmins argue that the Hindus not only never ate beef, but they always held the cow to be sacred and were always opposed to the killing of the cow, it is impossible to accept their view. What is the evidence in support of the construction that the Hindus never ate beef and were opposed to the killing of the cow? There are two series of references in the Rig Veda on which reliance is placed. In one of these, the cow is spoken of as Agnya. They are Rig Veda 1.164, 27, semicolon, 4.1.6, semicolon, 5, 82 to 88, semicolon, 7.69.71, semicolon, 10.87. Agnya means one who does not deserve to be killed. From this it is argued that this was a prohibition against the killing of the cow, and that since the Vedas are the final authority in the matter of religion, it is concluded that the Aryans could not have killed the cows, much less could they have eaten beef. In another series of references, the cow is spoken of as sacred. They are Rig Veda 6.28.1.8 and 8.101.15. In these verses, the cow is addressed as mother of Rudras, the daughter of Vasus, the sister of the Adityas, and the center of nectar. Another reference on the subject is in Rig Veda 8.101.16, where the cow is called Devi, that is the goddess. Reliance is also placed on certain passages in the Brahmanas and Sutras. There are two passages in the Satpatha Brahmana which relate to animal sacrifice and beef eating. One is at 3.1.2.21 and reads, inverted comma begins, he, that is the Adhvaryu, then makes him enter the hall. Let him not eat the flesh of either the cow or the ox, for the cow and the ox doubtless support everything here on earth. The gods spake, verily the cow and the ox support everything here. Come, let us bestow on the cow and the ox whatever vigor belonged to other species of animals, and therefore the cow and the ox eat most. Hence, were one to eat the flesh of an ox or a cow, there would be, as it were, an eating of everything, or, as it were, a going to the end or to destruction. Let him therefore not eat the flesh of the cow and the ox. Inverted comma closed. The other passage is at 1, 2, 3, and 6. It speaks against animal sacrifice and on ethical grounds. A similar statement is contained in the Apastambha Dharma Sutra at 1, 5, 17, and 29. Apastambha lays a general embargo on the eating of cow's flesh. Such is the evidence in support of the contention that the Hindus never ate beef. What conclusion can be drawn from this evidence? So far as the evidence from the Rig Veda is concerned, the conclusion is based on a misreading and misunderstanding of the texts. The adjective Agnya applied to the cow in the Rig Veda means a cow that was yielding milk and therefore not fit for being killed. That the cow is venerated in the Rig Veda is of course true, but this regard and venerations of the cow are only to be expected from an agricultural community like the Indo-Aryans. This application of the utility of the cow did not prevent the Aryan from killing the cow for purposes of food. Indeed, the cow was killed because the cow was regarded as sacred, as observed by Mr. Kane, reference to Dharma Shastra Vichar in Marathi, page number 180. Quotation begins. It was not that the cow was not sacred in Vedic times. It was because of her sacredness that it is ordained in the Vajasneyi Samhita that beef should be eaten, inverted comma closed. That the Aryans of the Rig Veda did kill cows for purposes of food and ate beef is abundantly clear from the Rig Veda itself. In Rig Veda 10.86.14, Indra says, they cook for 115 plus 20 oxen. The Rig Veda 10.91.14 says that for Agni was sacrificed horses, bulls, oxen, barren cows and rams. From the Rig Veda 10.72.6, it appears that the cow was killed with a sword or axe. As to the testimony of the Satpata Brahmana, can it be said to be conclusive? Obviously, it cannot be, for there are passages in the other Brahmanas which give a different opinion. To give only one instance, among the Kamyashtis set forth in the Taittiriya Brahmana, not only the sacrifice of oxen and cows are laid down, but we are even told what kind and description of oxen and cows are to be offered to what deities. Thus, a dwarf ox is to be chosen for sacrifice to Vishnu, a drooping horned bull with a blaze on the forehead to Indra as the destroyer of Vritra, a black cow to Pushan, a red cow to Rudra, and so on. The Taittiriya Brahmana notes another sacrifice called Panch Sardiya Seva, the most important element of which was the immolation of 17 5-year-old humpless dwarf bulls and as many dwarf heifers under 3-year-old. As against the statement of the Apastamba Dharma Sutra, these points may be noted. First is the contrary statement contained in the very sutra. At 14, 15 and 29, the sutra says, inverted comma begins, the cow and the bull are sacred and therefore should be eaten, inverted comma closed. The second is the prescription of Madhuparka contained in the Grahya Sutras. Among the Aryans, the etiquette for receiving important guests had become settled into custom and had become a ceremony. The most important offering was Madhuparka. A detailed description regarding Madhuparka are to be found in the various Grahya Sutras. According to most of the Grahya Sutras, there are 6 persons who have a right to be served with Madhuparka, namely 1. Ritvija or the Brahmin, called to perform a sacrifice. 2. Acharya, the teacher. 3. The bridegroom. 4. The king. 5. The Snatak, that is the student who has just finished his studies at the Gurukul, and 6. Any person who is dear to the host. Some add Atithi to this list. Except in the case of Ritvija, king and Acharya, Madhuparka is to be offered to the rest once in a year. To the Ritvija, king and Acharya, it is to be offered each time they come. What was this Madhuparka made of? There is divergence about the substances mixed in offering Madhuparka. Ashwalayana Graha Sutra and Apastamba Grahya Sutra, within brackets 13.10, prescribe a mixture of honey and curds or clarified butter and curds. Others, like Paraskara Grahya Sutra, prescribes a mixture of 3, that is curds, honey and butter. Apastamba Grahya Sutra, within brackets 13.11 to 12, states the view of some that those 3 may be mixed, or 5, that is, those 3 with fried yava grain and barley. Hiranyakesi Graha Sutra 12, 10 to 12 gives the option of mixing 3 of 5, that is, curds, honey, ghee, water and ground grain. The Kaushika Sutra, page number 92, speaks of 9 kinds of mixtures, that is, Brahma, that is honey and curds, Aindra of Paisa, Saumya, that is curds and ghee, Paushna, that is ghee and mantha. Saraswata, that is milk and ghee. Mausala, that is wine and ghee. This being used only in Sautramani and Rajasuya sacrifices. Parivrajaka, that is sesame oil and oil cake. The Madhav Griha Sutra 1.9.22 says that the Veda declares that the Madhuparka must not be without flesh, and so it recommends that if the cow is let loose, goat's meat or payasa, that is rice cooked in milk, may be offered. The Hiranyakesi Griha Sutra 1.13 and 14 says that other meat should be offered. Baudhyana Griha Sutra 1.2 and 51 to 54 says that when the cow is let off, the flesh of a goat or ram may be offered, or some forest flesh, that is of a deer, etc., may be offered, as there can be no Madhuparka without flesh, or if one is unable to offer flesh, one may cook ground grains. Thus the essential element in Madhuparka is flesh, and particularly cow's flesh. The killing of cow for the guest had grown to such an extent that the guest came to be called Go Ghana, which means the killer of the cow. To avoid this slaughter of the cows, the Ashwalayana Griha Sutra 1.24.25 suggests that the cow should be let loose when the guest comes, so as to escape the rule of etiquette. Thirdly, reference may be made to the ritual relating to disposal of the dead to counter the testimony of the Apastamba Dharma Sutra. The sutra says, reference to Keynes Volume 2, Part 1, page 545. Inverted comma begins. 1. He should then put the following sacrificial implements on the dead body. 2. Into the right hand the spoon called guhu. 3. Into the left the other spoon called upabhrit. 4. On his right side the wooden sacrificial sword called sphaya. On his left side the Agnihotra Havani, that is the ladle with which the Agnihotra oblations are sacrificed. 5. On his chest the big sacrificial ladle called dhruva. On his head the dishes. On his teeth the pressing stones. On the two sides of his nose the two smaller sacrificial laddies called sruvas. 7. Or if there is only one sruva, breaking it in two pieces. 8. On his 2 ears the 2 prasitra haranas, that is the vessels into which the portion of the sacrificial food belonging to the Brahmin is put. 9. Or if there is only one prasitra harana, breaking it in 2 pieces. 10. On his belly the vessel called patri. 11. And the cup into which the cut-off portion of the sacrificial food are put. 12. On his secret parts the staff called sami. 13. On his thighs 2 kindling woods. 14. On his legs the mortar and the pestle. 15. On his feet the 2 baskets. 16. Or if there is only one basket, breaking it in 2 pieces. 17. Those of the implements which have a hollow into which liquids can be poured are filled with sprinkled butter. 18. The son of the deceased person should take the under and the upper millstone for himself. 19. And the implements made of copper, iron, and earthenware. 20. Taking out the momentum of the she-animal, he should cover therewith the head and the mouth of the dead person with the verse, inverted comma begins, but on the armor which will protect thee against Agni by that which comes from the cows, inverted comma closed, taken from Rigveda 10.16.7. 21. Taking out the kidneys of the animal, he should lay them into the hands of the dead body with the verse, "Escaped the two hounds, the sons of Sarma." Within brackets, Rigveda 10.14.10. The right kidney into the right hand and the left into the left hand. 22. The heart of the animals he puts on the heart of the deceased. 23. And 2 lumps of flour or rice according to some teachers. 24. Only if there are no kidneys according to some teachers. 25. Having distributed the whole animal limb by limb, placing its different limbs on the corresponding limbs of the deceased, and having covered it with its hide, he recites when the pranita water is carried forward. The verse is, inverted comma begins, "Agni, do not overturn this cup." Reference to Rigveda 10.16.8. 26. Bending his left knee, he should sacrifice yogya oblation into the dakshina fire with the formulas, inverted comma begins, to Agni Swaha, to Kama Swaha, to the world Swaha, to Anumati Swaha, inverted comma closed. 27. A fifth oblation on the chest of the deceased with the formula, "From this one verily thou hast been born. May he now be born out of thee, to the heaven worlds Swaha." From the above passage, quoted from the Ashwalina Grahya Sutra, it is clear that among the ancient Indo-Aryans, when a person died, an animal had to be killed, and the parts of the animal were placed on the appropriate parts of the dead body before the dead body was burned. Such is the state of the evidence on the subject of cow killing and beef eating. Which part of it is to be accepted as true? The correct view is that the testimony of the Satpata Brahmana and the Apastamba Dharma Sutra, insofar as it supports the view that Hindus were against cow killing and beef eating, are merely exhortations against the excesses of cow killing and not prohibitions against cow killing. Indeed, the exhortations prove that cow killing and eating of beef had become a common practice. That notwithstanding these exhortations, cow killing and beef eating continued. That most often they fell on deaf ears is proved by the conduct of Yagnavalkya, the great rishi of the Aryans. The first passage quoted above from the Satpata Brahmana was really addressed to Yagnavalkya as an exhortation. How did Yagnavalkya respond? After listening to the exhortation, this is what Yagnavalkya said. Inverted comma begins, "I, for one, eat it, provided that it is tender." Inverted comma closed. That the Hindus at one time did kill cows and did eat beef is proved abundantly by the description of the yagnas given in the Buddhist sutras, which relate to periods much later than the Vedas and the Brahmanas. The scale on which the slaughter of cows and animals took place was colossal. It is not possible to give a total of such slaughter on all accounts committed by the Brahmins in the name of religion. Some idea of the extent of this slaughter can, however, be had from references to it in the Buddhist literature. As an illustration, reference may be made to the Kutadanta Sutta, in which Buddha preached against the performance of animal sacrifices to Brahmin Kutadanta. Buddha, though speaking in a tone of sarcastic travesty, gives a good idea of the practices and rituals of the Vedic sacrifices when he said, inverted comma begins, "And further, O Brahmin, at that sacrifice neither were any oxen slain, neither goats, nor fowls, nor fatted pigs, nor were any kind of living creatures put to death. No trees were cut down to be used as posts, no darba grasses mown to stress around the sacrificial spot, and the slaves and messengers and workmen there employed were driven neither by rods nor fear, nor carried on their work, weeping with tears upon their faces. inverted comma closed. Kutadanta, on the other hand, in thanking Buddha for his conversion, gives an idea of the magnitude of the slaughter of animals which took place at such sacrifices when he says, inverted comma begins, I betake myself to the Venerable Gautama as my guide, to the doctrine and the order. May the Venerable One accept me as a disciple, as one who from this day forth, as long as life endures, has taken him as his guide. And I myself, O Gautama, will have the 700 bulls and the 700 steers and the 700 heifers and the 700 goats and the 700 rams set free. To them I grant their life. Let them eat grass and drink fresh water, and may cool breezes waft around them. Inverted comma closed. In the Samyutta Nikaya, Volume 3, page 1-9, we have another description of a yagna performed by Pasenadi, king of Kosala. It is said that 500 bulls, 500 calves, and many heifers, goats, and rams were led to the pillar to be sacrificed. With this evidence, no one can doubt that there was a time when Hindus, both Brahmins and non-Brahmins, ate not only flesh but also beef. Chapter 12. Why did non-Brahmins give up beef eating? The food habits of the different classes of Hindus have been as fixed and stratified as their cults. Just as Hindus can be classified on their basis of their cults, so also they can be classified on the basis of their habits of food. On the basis of their cults, Hindus are either Shaivites, that is followers of Shiva, or Vaishnavites, that is follower of Vishnu. Similarly, Hindus are either Mansahari, that is those who eat flesh, or Shakahari, that is those who are vegetarians. For ordinary purposes, the division of Hindus into two classes, that is Mansahari and Shakahari, may be enough, but it must be admitted that it is not exhaustive and does not take account of all the classes which exist in Hindu society. For an exhaustive classification, the class of Hindus called Mansahari shall have to be further divided into two subclasses. 1. Those who eat flesh but do not eat cow's flesh, and 2. Those who eat flesh including cow's flesh. In other words, on the basis of food taboos, Hindu society falls into three classes. 1. Those who are vegetarians. 2. Those who eat flesh but do not eat cow's flesh. And 3. Those who eat flesh including cow's flesh. Corresponding to this classification, we have in Hindu society three classes: Brahmins, non-Brahmins, and the untouchables. This division, though not in accord with the fourfold division of society called Chaturvarnya, yet it is in accord with facts as they exist. For in the Brahmins, we have a class which is vegetarian. Reference to the Brahmins of India fall into two divisions, 1 Panchadravid and 2 Panchagauda. The former are vegetarians, the latter are not. In the non-Brahmins, the class which eats flesh but does not eat cow's flesh, and in the untouchables, a class which eats flesh including cow's flesh. This threefold division is therefore substantial and is in accord with facts. Anyone who stops to turn over this classification in his mind is bound to be struck by the position of the non-Brahmins. One can quite understand vegetarianism. One can quite understand meat eating. But it is difficult to understand why a person who is a flesh eater should object to one kind of flesh, namely cow's flesh. This is an anomaly which calls for explanation. Why did the non-Brahmin give up beef eating? For this purpose, it is necessary to examine laws on the subject. The relevant legislation must be found either in the law of Ashoka or the law of Manu. Section 2. To begin with Ashoka, the Edicts of Ashoka, which have reference to this matter, are Rock Edict number 1 and Pillar Edict numbers 2 and 5. Rock Edict number 1 reads, inverted comma begins, "The pious edict has been written by command of His Sacred and Gracious Majesty the King. Here in the capital no animal may be slaughtered for sacrifice, nor may the holiday feast be held, because His Sacred and Gracious Majesty the King sees much offense in the holiday feasts, although in certain places holiday feasts are excellent in the sight of His Sacred and Gracious Majesty the King. Formerly, in the kitchen of His Sacred and Gracious Majesty the King, each day many hundred thousands of living creatures were slaughtered to make curries. But now, when this pious edict is being written, only 3 living creatures are slaughtered daily for curry, to wit, 2 peacocks and 1 antelope. The antelope, however, not invariably. Even those 3 living creatures henceforth shall not be slaughtered." Inverted comma closed. Pillar Edict number 2 says, inverted comma begins, "Thus saith His Sacred and Gracious Majesty the King, the law of piety is excellent, but wherein consists the law of piety? In these things, to wit, little piety, many good deeds, compassion, liberality, truthfulness, and purity. The gift of spiritual insight I have given in manifold ways, whilst on 2-footed and 4-footed beings, on birds and the denizens of the waters, I have conferred various favors even unto the boon of life, and many other good deeds have I done. For this purpose have I caused this pious edict to be written, that men may walk after its teaching, and that it may long endure, and he who will follow its teaching will do well." Inverted comma closed. Pillar Edict 5 says, inverted comma begins, "Thus said His Sacred and Gracious Majesty the King, when I had been consecrated 26 years, the following species were declared exempt from slaughter, namely, parrots, starling adjutants, Brahmani ducks, geese, pandimukhas, gelatas, bats, queen ants, female tortoises, boneless fish, Vedveyakas, Ganga puputakas, skate, river tortoise, porcupines, tree squirrels, barasinga, stag, Brahmani, bulls, monkeys, rhinoceros, grey doves, village pigeons, and all 4-footed animals which are not utilized or eaten. She-goats, ewes, cows, that is to say, those either with young or in milk, are exempt from slaughter, as well as their offspring up to 6 months of age. The capooning of cocks must not be done. Chaff must not be burnt along with the living things in it. Forests must not be burnt either for mischief or so as to destroy living creatures. The living must not be fed with the living. At each of the 3 seasonal full moons and at the full moon of the month, Tishya, that is December to January, for 3 days in each case, namely the 14th and 15th days of the first fortnight and the first day of the second fortnight, as well as on the first days throughout the year, fish is exempt from killing and may not be sold. On the same days, in elephant preserves or fish ponds, no other classes of animals may be destroyed. On the 8th, 14th, and 15th days of each fortnight, as well as on the Tishya and Punarvasa days and festival days, the castration of bulls must not be performed, nor may he-goats, rams, boars, and other animals liable to castration be castrated. On the Tishya and Punarvasa days, on the seasonal full moon days, and during the fortnights of the seasonal full moons, the branding of horses and oxen must not be done. During the time up to the 26th anniversary of my consecration, 25 jail deliveries have been effected. Inverted comma closed. So much for the legislation of Ashoka. Section 3. Let us turn to Manu. His laws contain the provisions regarding meat eating. They are 5.11. Let him avoid all carnivorous birds and those living in villages and one-hoofed animals which are not specifically permitted to be eaten, and the titbha, that is parajakna. 5.12. The sparrow, the plawa, the hamsa, the brahmini duck, the village cock, the saras crane, the ragudal, the woodpecker, the parrot, and the starling. 5.13. Those which feed striking with their beaks, web-footed birds, the koyashti, those which scratch with their toes, those which dive and live on fish, meat from a slaughterhouse, and dried meat. 5.14. The baka and the balaka crane, the raven, the kangartaka, that is animals that eat fish, village pigs, and all kinds of fishes. 5.15. He who eats the flesh of any animal is called the eater of the flesh of that particular creature. He who eats fish is an eater of every kind of flesh. Let him therefore avoid fish. 5.16. But the fish called pathin and that called rohita may be eaten. If used for offering to the gods or to the mains, one may eat likewise ragivas, simhatundas, and sasalakas on all occasions. 5.17. Let him not eat solitary or unknown beasts and birds, though they may fall under the categories of eatable creatures, not any five-toed animals. 5.18. The porcupine, the hedgehog, the iguana, the rhinoceros, the tortoise, and the hare, they declare to be eatable. Likewise, those domestic animals that have teeth in one jaw, excepting camels. Inverted comma closed. Section 4. Here is survey of the legislation both by Ashoka and by Manu on the slaughter of animals. We are, of course, principally concerned with the cow. Examining the legislation of Ashoka, the question is, did he prohibit the killing of the cow? On this issue, there seems to be a difference of opinion. Professor Vincent Smith is of opinion that Ashoka did not prohibit the killing of the cow. Commenting on the legislation of Ashoka on the subject, Professor Smith says, reference to his book Ashoka, page number 58. Inverted comma begins, it is noteworthy that Ashoka's rule do not forbid the slaughter of cow, which apparently continued to be lawful. Inverted comma closed. Professor Radha Kumud Mukherjee joins issue with Professor Smith and says that Ashoka did not prohibit the slaughter of the cow. This reference is taken from his book Ashoka, page number 21, 181 and 184. Professor Mukherjee relies upon the reference in Pillar Edict 5 to the rule of exemption, which was made applicable to all four-footed animals, and argues that under this rule, cow was exempted from killing. This is not a correct reading of the statement in the edict. The statement in the edict is a qualified statement. It does not refer to all four-footed animals, but only to four-footed animals, which are not utilized or eaten. A cow cannot be said to be a four-footed animal which was not utilized or eaten. Professor Vincent Smith seems to be correct in saying that Ashoka did not prohibit the slaughter of the cow. Professor Mukherjee tries to get out of the difficulty by saying that at the time of Ashoka, the cow was not eaten and therefore came within the prohibition. His statement is simply absurd, for the cow was an animal which was very much eaten by all classes. It is quite unnecessary to resort, as does Professor Mukherjee, to a forced construction of the edict and to make Ashoka prohibit the slaughter of the cow, as though it was his duty to do so. Ashoka had no particular interest in the cow and owed no special duty to protect her against killing. Ashoka was interested in the sanctity of all life, human as well as animal. He felt his duty to prohibit the taking of life where taking of life was not necessary. That is why he prohibited slaughtering animal for sacrifice. Reference to see Rock Edict number 1. Reference over. Which he regarded as unnecessary, and of animals which are not utilized nor eaten, which again would be wanton and unnecessary. That he did not prohibit the slaughter of the cow in specie may well be taken as a fact which, for having regard to the Buddhist attitude in the matter, cannot be used against Ashoka as a ground for casting blame. Coming to Manu, there is no doubt that he too did not prohibit the slaughter of the cow. On the other hand, he made the eating of cow's flesh on certain occasions obligatory. Why then did the non-brahmins give up eating beef? There appears to be no apparent reason for this departure on their part, but there must be some reason behind it. The reason I like to suggest is that it was due to their desire to imitate the Brahmins that the non-Brahmins gave up beef eating. This may be a novel theory, but it is not an impossible theory. As the French author Gabriel Tarde has explained, that culture within a society spreads by imitation of the ways and manners of the superior classes by the inferior classes. This imitation is so regular in its flow that its working is as mechanical as the working of a natural law. Gabriel Tarde speaks of the laws of imitation. One of these laws is that the lower classes always imitate the higher classes. This is a matter of such common knowledge that hardly any individual can be found to question its validity. That the spread of the cow worship among and cessation of beef eating by the non-Brahmins has taken place by reason of the habit of the non-Brahmins to imitate the Brahmins, who were undoubtedly their superiors, is beyond dispute. Of course, there was an extensive propaganda in favor of cow worship by the Brahmins. The Gayatri Puran is a piece of this propaganda, but initially it is the result of the natural law of imitation. This, of course, raises another question. Why did the Brahmins give up beef eating?